A terrific Tuesday on Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. The plot thickens every single week. And while we're talking about impeachment and Iran and Iraq and all this other stuff, right down the street here at the federal courthouse, there are still cases that are going along against Jeffrey Epstein. They're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. And one of the foremost experts on this whole Epstein story, James Robertson, joins us now. He's the author of the book, True Story of One of the Greatest Espionage Scandals in American History, Dead Men Tell No Tales. And thank you for joining us, James. The book just came out in December. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it everywhere. Go out and check out the book. Did some deep dive research here. What can you tell us about what's happening here?
So the whole story has become something so terrifying, so chilling, that you can't go to sleep and wake up any morning now without another front page story about Epstein, about the conspiracy. Was it suicide? Was it murder? Is there something more sinister at play? You know, it's really something that every day there's a new revelation, and it just gets more and more terrifying as a journalist and as an observer.
What have you uncovered in this deep dive into Dead Men Tell No Tales? I've long held the conspiracy theory that the Clinton cartel is behind this alleged suicide. What evidence have you got so far?
So one of the biggest revelations was that Jeffrey Epstein was essentially a spy. And when you say that word, people immediately think of James Bond jumping from roof to roof, Bentleys and cocktails and Russian women in high heels. But he was in his late 60s, elderly man, but he was a peddler of information. So really what he had was an opportunity to leverage blackmail material against politicians, world leaders, businessmen and moguls. And really, he was for sale. Anything that he wanted to get, he would use what he obtained against them.
Well, give me an example, because there's a lot of conjecture out there, there's a lot of hearsay. Give me an example of a piece of evidence you've uncovered that he was actually some kind of asset spy.
So Sir Robert Maxwell, who is Ghislaine Maxwell, her father, was an alleged Israeli spy. Now, I found a man called Ari Ben Menashe, who's currently in Canada, who, by his own account, he's come forward to say he was a spy working for Mossad. He was also Robert Maxwell's handler. He introduced Ghislaine to Jeffrey Epstein, and I spoke to him. Yeah, so he confirmed to me that Epstein was a spy. He did have this material, and he was part of the Mossad.
So he was flying around and having all these young girls on his plane and the Lolita Express and the island and all this other stuff, and he was really taking notes the whole time so that he could blackmail everybody, is what one of the allegations this book has.
Yeah, and another point to that was, we know about the cameras in every room. The surveillance cameras hooked up to factory-sized printers in every home he had in whether it's New York, New Mexico, a ranch, his West Palm Beach home, or the island. We found also a former Palm Beach County Sheriff, John Mark Dugan, who's now currently has political asylum in Russia, which Vladimir Putin granted him. He was a cop at the time when Epstein obtained his sweetheart deal in Florida. And he told me, I spoke to him, he was in the back seat of a taxi in Moscow, and he was jumping from cab to cab because he was worried he was being followed. And he told me that material exists, hundreds and thousands of hours of DVDs of politicians, rich men in compromising positions with young women.
Well, I wish there was a video that existed of who actually went in his cell and committed this alleged suicide. I have some conspiracy theories, but my co-host Frank Morano here is with you. He believes that Jeffrey Epstein is actually dead. Frank, what do you think?
Call me crazy. And I appreciate all the work that you put into this book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to doing so. 60 Minutes showed these photos of Jeffrey Epstein and his cell on Sunday, including they spoke with Dr. Michael Baden, who performed the autopsy. Dr. Michael Baden, who's one of the most respected forensic pathologists in the whole country, says these injuries were much more consistent with a murder as opposed to a suicide. In your book, you say conclusively, not inconclusively, that this was a murder, not a suicide. From your research and the folks that you've spoken to, why was Jeffrey Epstein silenced?
So the problem we have with this current situation regarding was it murder, was it suicide, is there are so many unanswered questions. And what we do in the book is we essentially present to you all of the evidence, all of the theories. We spoke to an inmate at the time who witnessed his first suicide attempt, a story that I broke exclusively. And what we came to the conclusion of was there were so many red flags. There is a camera inside his unit that was not working the day he was found dead. So question one, why? Number two, he was meant to be checked on every 30 minutes in solitary confinement. He wasn't checked on for 8 hours. Why? You know, the two guards who were on duty that night were asleep, according to some statements.
They were provisioned from other agencies because they were also temps, so they just happened to show up. That wasn't their regular shift. I want to ask you this. I've taken this conspiracy theory one step further. I don't believe that he committed suicide, nor do I believe he's even dead.
Oh, please.
I think that he's still alive, and I think the Mossad or whoever's running him has him coming back now as Joe Walsh to run against Donald Trump for president, try to take him down this way. Take a look at this. Tell me what you think. That's Jeffrey Epstein, and that's Republican primary challenger to Donald Trump, Joe Walsh. They look eerily similar, if you ask me.
If I could bring this conversation slightly closer to reality, and only slightly. One of the things we've been trying to figure out is how Jeffrey Epstein made all his money. There seems to be a lot of mystery surrounding his finances and his financial career. Based on your research and the interviews you conducted for this book, how did Epstein amass such a massive fortune?
So we actually dedicate a whole chapter to that mystery. And it's Stephen Hoffenberg has come forward after the fact. And he was a co-conspirator with Epstein. He was the brains behind this huge Ponzi scheme with Towers Financial. And it was one of these situations where he would just amass such a large fortune almost overnight. He went from having not a dollar in his bank to being part of a Ponzi scheme that saw Hoffenberg jailed for decades, and Epstein didn't serve 1 day behind bars for the crimes Hoffenberg allegedly claims that Epstein committed.
So hundreds of millions of dollars gone. Epstein walks free. Hundreds of underage kids potentially in a sex trafficking ring. He walks free again, spends a couple days a week in the county lockup. And now when they finally get him, he mysteriously disappears. You got to come back and keep us posted on this story. You got to go out and check out Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's on Amazon. Everywhere you get your books, go get it. Check it out. This is a deep dive into what really happened. James Robertson, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for putting up with my crazy conspiracy theories, but there's going to be more to come right after this when Liquid Lunch continues in just a few. Stay right there.